position back there.
Should I be down?
Oh, hold on a minute now. Let's see.
Oh no, Genine, you go on the stage.
No, whatever you're comfortable at. Yeah.
Whatever.
Star.
Well,
She's gonna go up
let's
with
let's let Bart introduce her, but let me just say welcome and that sort of thing. All right. So I think this is the starting point. That's how we do it. So anyway, anybody ever meet this fella? This is Bart Schneider, and he will be presenting his book, Giacometti's Last Ride. That's the book. I've known him for quite a long time. When you came here, when David Meltzer and Neil Tchaikovsky were doing some kind of poetic thing.
I think that was before I met Katrine. Yeah.
So that's a long time ago.
Yeah, 15 years ago.
16, 17
And then he
years.
became a publisher. Both of them did. So there's some output here, including Janine's book. So anyway, I'm pleased to have the reading, the fifth in a cycle of readings so far since the release, right? Something like that.
This is actually the 7th reading of the year.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I'll get it out of the way. I'm going to make sure that they're hearing you properly in the stream. And then
Okay.
you can introduce
Thank
the
you,
whole
Eric.
thing. Thank you. So let me see. Don't get too carried away.
Okay, I want to thank you, Eric, and this wonderful shop, Bart and Beckett. This is really just about the bee's knees for an independent bookstore to actually double as a jazz club and do it so wonderfully, at least 3 nights a week, and promote so many local writers and just be what it is to this community. I think that this has got to be, it gets my vote of the year, and I've been around to a lot of independent bookstores in my time. I'm really happy to be reading with Genine Lentine. I don't know how we met.
Through Naomi.
Yeah, our mutual friend Naomi Shiab Nye told me, you have got to meet Genine Lentine. She is like the coolest poet in San Francisco, and I kind of agree. We had the privilege of, Katrina and I, of publishing her book Poses in, what was that, about 2012. And I think I first knew about her work because I'd found her wonderful book with Stanley Kunitz, The Wild Braid, about, she had been his secretary in both Provincetown and New York, the great poet late in his life. But the book is really about gardening with Stanley Kunitz. And this book, Poses, is, I just think, one of the most ingenious things, and it kind of opened up our publishing world, the Kelly's Cove Press, in that this is a book that Genine wrote as somebody who had gone to live drawing classes and instead of drawing, written. So these are the actual poses and the idea of posing, and it gave us the opportunity as publishers to find a way to use Richard Diebenkorn's drawings in this book, and we went on to publish four Diebenkorn books. And what am I leaving out, Genine? That you were for a while the poet in residence at the Zen Center, and that you lead workshops at Tassajara.
I have, yeah. Now I just do them on my own. I mean, I actually am currently teaching a workshop through Zen Center online, but yeah, mostly just on my own.
Well, I'm really excited to hear you read.
Yay, I'm so happy. Thank you so much. Thank you, Bart and Katrine and Eric and everyone here. It's so nice to just relax together and read some things in each other's presence. It's always, at this moment, it always feels especially nice to be doing things in person, like to just be in a room together and reading. So you said about 30 minutes? You want like 20? Yeah. Okay. Just to get a sense of what I'll be reading, I'll read a little bit from Poses and some newer poems, and then also moving into Bart's reading a couple passages from Giacometti's Last Ride. So I'll start with Poses. So as Bart was saying, these are poems that I wrote in a drawing group, and most of those drawing groups were either in New York or in Provincetown, and there's the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown, and while I was there, I was there every summer for 7 years working with Stanley, and in my first summer there, I met Bob Henry and Selena Treef, who are these incredible painters who Selena has since passed away, but Bob still lives in Wellfleet, and just, lifelong painters. And I was actually modeling for their drawing classes or painting classes. And then that led to going to their drawing group in New York City, which was so nice upon moving to New York to go to this group because they had been meeting for like 40 years, like Friday mornings and I think Tuesday afternoon. Not sure about the Tuesday part. I know there was like another part of it, but it was mainly the Friday morning. And so to just enter this space, Selena's 6th floor walk up and, just filled with paintings and drawings and the depth of their interaction. So that's kind of the backdrop of a lot of these. And so I just was noticing that being in that, I went to draw, but when I was there, I just was like noticing how the space was so conducive to concentration and each timed entry, it felt like just a really great container in which I could just kind of do anything. And so I just started to use the time for writing, but I did it on drawing paper and in pencil, so it still kind of had that gestural quality. And that was also, it was basically everything was about just kind of getting out of my head, and like, so it was really just, it was just an adaptation. It wasn't, I actually wasn't even necessarily writing poems on purpose. It was just, and then I actually showed some to Stanley, and he was saying, there's just at some point I typed them up and I was like, what are these? And to myself, and then I showed some to Stanley, and he just felt like there was a way that they sounded more, like what he said was it sounded more like me than whatever, like official poems I was writing. So there was something about that felt interesting, and then just kind of letting that space be that invitation to just kind of enter it. So I'm just going to read a little sample. And yes, and there are these beautiful Diebenkorn drawings in this book that Bart so beautifully published. There's some example. There's a copy of it here. I definitely recommend browsing through it. It's such a beautiful book, and the Diebenkorn Foundation allowed us to just kind of sift through and find drawings for the book, and that was incredible to spend those afternoons. And like the book has just, in some cases, just details. So. The pose seeks to catch the model somewhere between where she thought she was supposed to be and where she thinks she's supposed to be. A 5. And you probably know this, but there's a convention in drawing groups where it's like 30 seconds, 1 minute gesture, or like a 5-minute drawing, a 20-minute drawing. So sometimes these have like, a 5. A 5. And the monitor today has a digital timer, no ticking. I didn't miss the ticking until I heard other sounds in its absence. I would have noticed it sooner if I were modeling. Even if someone else operates the timer, the model is in charge of time. We, in these 5-minute oceans, can forget about it. It's being stopped, held for us. Like every new hack horse, Leon tacked up and held for me as I pressed my foot into the stirrup and swung onto its back, its haunches collecting under me, tail switching, tongue tossing the steel bit. Can you hear me okay? I feel like I should probably... Okay, good. 10-minute pose. Some things have been decided for me. The placement of his palm against the belly of his hamstring, the forward movement of his leg, cant of his head, torsion of spine and rib cage, how much time I've been given to study this arrangement. Sometimes it takes your own hand to move your leg forward. The lead line wrapped around Buttercup's back legs, coaxing her across the paddock, how she hopped her hooves ahead with the pressure of the lead. Where is the model trying to go that he needs a leather lead line looped around his leg? Or trying not to go? Where is he trying to stay? I told Richard, "You were my guide through the underworld." He said, "Where are we now?" That's Richard McCann, the beloved Richard McCann. He was a teacher in college and then friend. He passed away a couple years ago, but just an incredible writer and teacher. A 2. If I could live my life like a 2-minute pose, look, see the gesture, embody the gesture. Water posits itself over stone. It shapes the stone and is shaped. Time's up. Oh, that's an interesting point. That would be like, so the piece itself was exactly 2 minutes. I'll have to work on that.
That was 45 seconds.
Contour, just tracing along the perimeter, the outline, which doesn't exist, of the body in space. As the eye walks along it, it's possible to find peace. Speak into the good ear. Breathe into the good lung. Break the good rib to keep him going a few more years. Break the bedpost so death will forget where it left off. The model's fist pushes against his thigh. He's working at something. From the wood shop next door, hammering, and Bob and Selena's grandson's hamsters stir in their cage. I want a white stripe down my chest like Orbital, which means I want fur, which I do, and to walk on 4 legs, especially when going up a hill. Let's see a few more of these. The model's head tilts up in profile toward the exhaust fan, and a fly circles above. Actually not circles. Please forgive my one-planed sight bias. A fly darts the polyhedral geometry dictated by the jeweled surface of its eyes. What I can see of her is far less than the fly, who would view her through facets even if it were standing still, which it is not, which she's not, which I'm not. The fly is long gone, and still I mention it here. Let's see. To hold the pose all morning is to feel its decay. You take a break and someone remarks, "Your arm was higher." Then he comes and touches your wrist delicately with 2 fingers, as if conducting a seance, and asks, raising the arm, "Do you mind if I move your arm?" When Hanalina placed her pencil on my sternum and then lightly, in illustration of a point, drew a line down from my clavicle to the peak of my rib cage, I did not mind. I can feel the line even now, the pencil in her hand, torching the follicles. In this one, I mention Louis. Yeah, Louis. That was the venerable Labrador, very elderly Labrador of Selena and Bob, who would like be in our drawing sessions. The model is lying on her back with her legs slung over to the right and her head turned to the left. I can feel the release of it, the opening of the chest, the twist of the spine, the stretch along the side. Haptic knowledge. How does the drawing record that knowledge? What are the traces of subjective experience? Yesterday when we did handstands against the wall in yoga, I loved pitching forward onto my hands. The feel of my legs balancing above my hips. The exchange of weight, inverting the usual traffic of blood and gravity. All day I kept replaying that action in my mind. All that was left was actually to do the handstand right there on Fifth Avenue. Now my hand is on Louis's head, dog of miraculous comebacks. In my hand, all the dog's heads I've held. Sweet tilt of his face. Maybe Selena can tell the neighbors he would have fewer problems if he weren't so good at living. Now he's pushing the full weight of his will into me. Right under my hand, what keeps him alive? Petting Louis has become my drawing. So I'll just... that's Selena's dog. Okay. Oh, there's both of those. Now I'll just read a couple poems. And then we'll a sample of Bart's book. Okay. This poem actually is, I thought I would read this one because of Picasso's presence in Bart's novel. This poem is, there's that, have you ever seen the painting, the Picasso painting, Boy Leading a Horse? So this poem kind of comes off of that. It's called Go. When I strike the bell in the service, something in me braces for the bell to be gone. Not gone the way the G was gone from one octave on the church piano, mute under my finger, soft, muffled nothing. More gone than that, the striker unmet, the passenger seat empty. But the bell is always there, and the sound the striker makes against the body of the bell is the clear ringing of my flagging faith, again forgetting the generous world. I insert my Metro card in the turnstile, and it always says go. How is it each time I can trace the faintest shock? What is this outlived conviction so ready for impediment? In Picasso's Boy Leading a Horse, the boy leads the horse with no lead line. I know this feeling too. The horse, the boy, unbridled, empty-handed, pulled by a lead I can't see. I lower my hand and something follows. Onto my palm, a hot mouth, breathing. Let's see. This is, this has several titles, but one of its titles is Sonnet Murmured by the Earth. I cannot not touch you. Flood, fire, whatever becomes for you disaster, I cannot leave you out of it. However I quake, I am not indifferent. A mare may crush her own foal just by settling. I see you stitch the open field. Your technical knowledge lets you care with such precision, I didn't even call it care at first. I called it skill. I called it necessity. By then, the needle had swung. By then, I was already never who I was before you. By then, the shepherds had reckoned those boulders had once rested on the other side of the valley before the valley folded. They learned this by walking. They learned this by walking with sheep. That's how gentle knowledge can be. The sheep didn't even stop grazing. That poem has its roots in a poem that Jen Bervin and I collaborated on for the Center for Book Arts in New York. And there's sort of like a core of that poem that came into this poem. Okay, I'll read just a couple more. In the room where what is held precious is eaten by goats. Two silky black goats, couchant, rip apart a red brocade pillow. Though the delivery belt never empties, these two manage to stay just ahead of shredding what the world can't hold. One eventually sleeps, raising its eyes only when I look upon its flank and think, silky, and without moving its mouth, eats the word. Okay, I'll read two more poems. Actually, I'll read one more poem. I'm going to read this one, and then the other one, if I read it, I have to read it off my phone. So, we'll see. This is called Small Time Prophet, P-H-E-T. Her prophecies, if they came a moment later, would be simple reporting. But because she can see what's happening a hair before it happens, it still never fails to surprise her and also annoy her. She wants to turn it off. A little warning is of little use, she tells herself. A prophecy that comes true before you've even had a chance to foretell it aloud. A prophecy concurrent with its utterance. The key thing is just to live through what's difficult. Just stay with it, she tells the ones of us left, the ones who keep calling. Live through it, that's it. It sounds so simple now, but what it takes to take this in is contained in no emergency preparedness kit I could ever assemble. Prediction is overrated, she always says. People want me to tell the future. I get why they think that could help. But to have a clue about what's happening as it's happening, that's more useful. And forget about after. No one can do that. No one can tell the past. Still, the slight jump she is afforded, those pesky little heads-ups, do put her in a position to report this one finding. What you'll long for, you already have. She is intent on this point, but I still don't believe her. How else would we know to want it? She says this twice, first as a question, then as a statement, as if it's settled. I'm not saying don't want. Just try thinking of want as have. Try it first with easy things, see what happens. Actually, easy things can be stickier. Harder things, they have a weird give to them. Impossible things, well, if you know, you know. Long pause. Anyway, what do I know? Then she adds, to think you alone are the one time has wrecked, that does not help. She is silent for so long, I think the call has dropped. Then, what if I told you now you're going to have as long as you need? You'll have another minute and then another. You have so many still. I've seen how it is with you. Nothing I can tell you will satisfy you, no matter how long you're given. You prefer to believe you're in a contest, always angling to get a little ahead of it. You want a formula. You who would petition the sun for favor when it is you who've turned away. Wait, the sun? I turned away from the sun? Sorry, got carried away there for a sec. Let me say it another way. Okay, what if I or anyone could give you back any one of your fallen minutes right now? Could you spend it doing anything but thinking about what to do with it? It's not in any book yet. It's not even in a magazine. So
Ironically, you sounded like a prophet reading that.
amazing.
What's ironic about that?
Almost stolen them off.
Um,
I don't know what ironic means, but she knows what I meant.
yeah. Like, yeah. Well, the poem, I mean, it's partly like that poem came about because I kept having that experience of just being like just ahead of something, and I was like, well, what if someone did, like, what if someone started to trade on that, or even like unwittingly started, like, kind of part of what I'm imagining in that, with that whole thing about like those of us who keep calling, that, and the title like Small Time Prophet, like that she's just this kind of like niche, like she has like a little following, and like people, they just want to get like a little jump on something, and she's like, it's not that helpful, and like,
I'm like that.
but
I knew Bart was going to, do that to me.
you could feel it. Yeah. No, I think that it's that little jump that is so interesting. So, okay. Well, I'm really happy to be here for this reading and to be celebrating Bart's new novel. And I partly was especially interested to read it because I'm very drawn to things that are kind of in the life of a studio, like that things that are spending time in the process of making things. And so I've been really curious about this book, and I love Giacometti, and so I thought I would just read these two passages that are about Eli Lotar. And they're kind of about 3/4 of the way through the book. And this passage is called Hawkeye. Lotar pays a visit every afternoon. Giacometti delights in watching him take photos until he realizes that he and the atelier are the photographer's only subjects. Lotar snaps carefully cropped pictures of brushes soaking in turpentine, spent tubes of paint, clumps of steel files, and jagged knives. He seems to have, no surprise, a particular affinity for detritus, and takes one photograph after another of the studio's corners and mounds of spent plaster, clots of rags, and awkward piles of double-jointed scaffolding. On rainy days, he points his little camera at the galvanized buckets, catching loud drops. Lotar loses his fancy wardrobe in no time, and now he's on his third camera in a month. The first went missing. He found the second to be unsatisfactory for his purposes, but he's delighted with his current device, a green Kodak Hawkeye with a pop-up flash. Again, Giacometti tried to talk Lotar into getting a Leica like the one Cartier-Bresson uses. Henri says the Leica is the extension of his eye. Lotar countered, I want to keep it simple, Alberto. They call it point and click. It's about all I can hope for with my wet brain. This way, I can go to the pharmacy every other day and pick up my new snapshots. Lotar admits that he's begun to sell some of the photographs. Lazarus, the Creole bartender at the Mystic, bought a photograph of Giacometti perched 3 rungs up a ladder and dripping with wet plaster. He's taped the photo above the bar, Alberto, Lotar crows, and he points it out to everybody. Apparently, a couple of girls, Laura and Beatrice, bought photos of him standing at the easel. I only get a pittance for them, Alberto, but you would be pleased to know how happy the snapshots make your old friends now that you no longer frequent the Majestic. For Giacometti, seeing photographs of himself is the most shocking part of Lotar's enterprise. The cheap camera has an uncanny ability to capture the crevices and pocked flesh of his face. It's become clear to him that the absence of Caroline has aged him more than her presence miraculously rejuvenated him. In an exterior photograph in which his face is not visible, he's returning in a rainstorm to the atelier from chez Zucca. His overcoat, like a ragged tarp, is draped over his head. After seeing the photograph, it surprises him how clearly he remembers the moment crossing Rue Hippolyte Mandron in a downpour. At the time, he felt no panic, only weariness. His arms were in the air, pushing the collar of his coat over his head, and his pants seemed to be falling down. The sad truth is that his pants are always falling down now. Maybe he's lost considerable weight. He punched a new hole in his belt, but it makes little difference. How much longer can a man go on with his pants perpetually slipping down his waist? Perhaps the only cloth he's fit for any longer is a shroud. He thinks to tell Lotard to stop photographing him, as if this prohibition would retard his physical demise. Such a ban might keep Lotard from visiting the atelier, just as Giacometti has come to depend on his visits.
Good choice.
Okay, and then this is a follow-up visit. I love the portrait that Bart is creating in that short passage. A knock at the door. The next afternoon, as he sits by the picture window watching the spirited conversation of a young man and woman in the park, he hears a knock at the door. He hadn't expected death in the form of Marcel the fever to come in the afternoon, but he's as ready as he'll ever be. At first he doesn't answer. Will the knocking stop? Perhaps Marcel will go to somebody else's door, but the knocker is insistent. He rises from his chair at the window and stumbles in a zigzag trail to the door. Before turning the knob, he tells himself to meet death's eyes, that there's no reason to be shy at this point. After a deep breath, he twists the knob and pulls open the door. When he realizes that death has arrived in the face of Eli Lotard, he laughs so hard he almost falls over. Lotard enters the room like a gunfighter from the Westerns, just as he'd seen Cartier-Bresson do in his atelier, snapping pictures instead of firing bullets. Lotard looks like his old tattered self. His shoes have no laces, his shirt is stained with blood, but with his little camera, he has a purpose. Alberto, he calls in the midst of his perambulations. How can it be that you lock yourself away in such majesty and don't tell your friends where you are? If I hadn't run into Caroline... Never mind, here we are. Lotard pulls a flask from his jacket pocket. This is the good stuff, Alberto. I met a lass that traded me a bottle of VSOP for my charms. I know, you ask, what charms? And I agree with you wholeheartedly, but there are those, and I thank the goddess for them, who like to fish in the gutter. Giacometti chortles and is surprised by the sound of his own laughter. It's been a while since he's heard it. Lotard hands the flask to him, and he takes a deep swallow, enjoying the bite of fire down his throat. I think it's a form of penance for these evangelists. They like to clean you up, and after that's accomplished, if you flash them a smile and a little sparkle in the eye, they pounce. She was a hungry one, Alberto. Probably hadn't dined on what I had to offer for a long time. Giacometti used to pack rooms with his chatter, but now he's gone quiet for the most part. He's amused how others, even quiet souls like Diego, feel obliged to fill the vacuum. The ones who are natural talkers like Lothar barely stop for a breath. He passes the flask back to Lothar. Tell me, did you trade her your shoelaces as part of the bargain? Oh, that's another matter. They were taken away from me. What do you think, Alberto? Is it really possible for a man to hang himself with his shoelaces? Lothar ranges around the suite again, snapping pictures. 15 minutes after his arrival, he excuses himself to the dark bathroom to put in a new roll of film. He squats beside Giacometti. The pop-up flash engages, and he snaps a few more photos. I have a question for you, Alberto, he says, standing now, the camera hanging loose from the strap around his neck. Why are the easel and work table empty? Where are your figures, your paintings? I've been waiting. You're not the type of man to wait, Alberto. He has no response. But before Lothar delivers more chatter, he says, I have a couple favors to ask. Anything, Alberto. First, pick up 3 Bosque pears at the market if they are available. I will find them. You have a craving? I want to draw them. And the other favor, Alberto? I would like you to make my deathbed portrait with your little camera. Lothar shakes his head. No. I'll get you the pears, but I'm not doing the other. Then it's not a favor, Lothar. It is a command. Make my deathbed portrait with that ugly little camera. Thank you so much. That was fun to read. Okay, that's yours.
You are a good reader.
Thank you. I love reading, and I love listening.
There's plenty more going.
Reading aloud with like this many people is just such a nice thing. You know, just kind of like a room, people sitting in a circle. Yeah, and like, you know, other people reading too. Like it's like a simple thing that's always available to us. It's so nice.
Thank you so much.
But you do it so well. Thank you,
That
Janine.
was so nice. Sorry, I have like so many things in my head.
Yeah. That's the most special thing, to hear somebody read from your work. And I was really excited to hear what Genine wanted to read. Lothar's, I think, beside Giacometti, my favorite character in this book.
I almost felt like Lothar chose me. Like, I just was like browsing through the book, and those passages were like very, they just came forward.
Yeah, he was a photographer and cinematographer in the 20s and 30s, and he worked with Man Ray and Buñuel, surrealist. He has some wonderful photos that can still be seen, but the war he was a casualty of the war and became like a clochard that kind of lived on the streets, came by Giacometti's studio a couple times a week and swept up, and Giacometti was very generous with him. I'd like to read a few, and this is kind of wonderful, this cozy little group of us in the dark, it feels like. I know I'm in the light, but
And the sounds from outside.
I'm getting used to wearing glasses to read. I read the first time with this book in New Orleans, and I was really it wasn't lit as well as this, and I was having trouble, seeing the text, and somebody said, try my glasses. It was kind of embarrassing, and I still don't know quite how to use them.
It's amazing that they work.
And look through them.
Between your eyes and the book.
Yeah, that's the trick. Um, when I was Giacometti was a wonderful character to write about because, for one thing, he's so well documented. People were in love with him. Photographers were in love with him, and he had some of the greatest photographers of the age taking his pictures, like Brassai and Cartier-Bresson. Um, and he was, and I've seen videos of him where he's being interviewed, and his hands are always in the middle of sculpting something. He never stops. He's always in plaster. He's always busy. And so when I started, I really wanted to think, how could I get into his body? I mean, I needed to kind of get into his skin. So this chapter's little section is called Dog's Body, and I found I've gone through and edited this as if I could make the next edition a little bit better, but you spend 10 years working on a book and then you go through and, why do I need those words there? Dog's Body. Strolling the lovely street, he stops to watch a black Labrador amble without a care in the world. The mutt who barks at a passing cat reminds Giacometti of himself. Dog's body, he mutters, in English term Sam Beckett taught him. It's slang for a menial worker or lackey, just as he is when his hands are in a muck of clay or plaster and his mind has departed. According to Beckett, Joyce used the word multiple times in Ulysses. Apparently, the inversion of God's body amused him. Dogs. He would be proud to have a dog's body, or to be a dog himself without a clue of his mortality. After the war, he sculptured quite a few canines, most of them quickly destroyed. He'd had Egyptian burial dogs in mind, but his were not worthy. He allowed one skeletal canine to survive, which he let his New York dealer, Pierre Matisse, get a hold of. Cast in an edition of 6, they landed in large public collections. He should have drowned the pooch in the first place. To his horror, people find the animal cute. Marlene Dietrich, of all people, asked him to make a dog just for her. She sent him 36 roses, but he didn't comply. It's the same with felines he made a few years earlier. These pieces will probably be his only ones to survive, along with a few human animals like Walking Man. Giacometti turns onto Avenue du Maine and sighs. He's always loved this part of Paris, the 14th. By now, he's spent the majority of his life here. It's a working class arrondissement that tourists only discover if they wander the wrong way from the popular cafes in Montparnasse or decide to visit the silent majority at the cemetery or catacombs. Tonight, he avoided the lamb curry at dinner, but the hearty meal he ate in its stead, rump steak and a sharp Roquefort sauce, is already bothering him. His stomach becomes angry quite often these days. Unfortunately, the malady, indigestion, ulcer, cancer, doesn't quell his appetite. A florid belch burns with acid and is redolent of Roquefort. Now a magnificent fart blusters forth with such force that a talc of plaster dust shivers from the fabric of his pants down his legs. Yeah. I felt like I was in his skin a little bit there.
What, you ever been that dirty?
Oh
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Used to play tackle football in the mud, you know, at the polo fields in San Francisco.
He's like a prototype for Jackson Lamb and Slow Horses.
Oh, yeah. I was, I've worked on this for a lot of years, and when I came down to seeing a 500-page manuscript and having to cut it out, one of the scenes I lost was Giacometti taking his lover, who he met in a brothel, Caroline, who's become his last model. He took her to see Godard's A Bout de Souffle, Breathless, and I thought when I was going back over it, it's too obvious that he would take her to the most iconic movie of the age, and it just seemed false. And then Richard, what's his name? Linklater came out with this great film just now, Nouvelle Vague, about the making of Breathless, and I thought, oh no, I mean, I should have left that scene in there.
It wasn't iconic at the time. It was new.
Yeah, but for me to go back and like pluck it just but I did in fact write a scene which I'm going to read from now that I wanted to read in Bart and Beckett because Bart and Beckett is also a great jazz club, and this one is set in the jazz club, and the pianist that is featured in this scene is Marshall Solal, who is a great French-Tunisian pianist who actually wrote the score for Breathless. And I don't think Giacometti knows that in this scene. And this is like how it looks when I go through and edit the book that's already published. Now the musicians, a trio of dignified figures wearing well-fitting suits, return to the stage. There's Marshall, Caroline says, pointing to the pianist. Giacometti studies the young man, a North African with a thick black mustache and an enviable nonchalance. He wonders if Caroline has had an amorous relation with the pianist and chides himself for the spark of jealousy. Beside the pianist, standing surprisingly close like a wind-bent tree, is the bass violinist, a lanky Scandinavian from the looks of him. The drummer, an older man in cowboy boots and a white suit, adjusts his stool behind the drum kit. He's perched a distance from the others, as if in exile. Giacometti wishes he had paper to draw the trio. Without a word, the pianist hunches over the keyboard and introduces a familiar theme. Caroline whispers, "All the things you are." He watches the virtuosity with which the pianist's fingers skip over the keyboard. The melody is briefly lost in the percussive force of the pianist's left hand and the cross rhythms he creates. The complex of lines seems like it's executed by four hands rather than two, as the song fractures into dissonant blocks of wizardry before returning to its familiar tunefulness. He focuses on the pianist's right hand. The crisp yet elaborate streaks of melody have the fluency of a Picasso line. Caroline bends toward him. He thinks of his own fingers working a tall lump of clay, a vertical keyboard, and how they operate like the pianist's digits, independent of the mind, and yet he's envious of the pianist's facility. With just his right hand, he can extend an unbroken line seemingly forever, while his left hand provides force, keeps time, and creates a harmonic structure that becomes the foundation for a new, shimmering city. The pianist leads the band through a long hour of songs that ranges into wilderness before returning to safety. Giacometti watches Caroline as her eyes glisten and her supple body sways to the beat. This music, with its fierce adventure, is native to her in a way he envies. When the trio finishes their set, Caroline leaps up and brings the young man back to their banquette. He stands to greet the piano wizard. Marshal Solal, Caroline says. This is Alberto Giacometti. The pianist bows deeply and says, "It is an honor to meet you, Monsieur Giacometti. I admire your work. I adored your recent exhibition at Galerie May. But you are the virtuoso, Monsieur. My work is static compared with yours. You are the revolutionary. I am only following a familiar script. What you accomplish with your right hand alone puts me to shame. I wish I were able to study with you. Do you take beginners? Maybe then I could learn how to animate my figures. You make me want to start over." "Nonsense," the pianist says. "You are the maestro." Caroline is delighted that Marshall knows who Alberto is. As the men dive into ardent conversation, she excuses herself. With one eye, Giacometti watches Caroline slither through the crowd and stop in front of a young man in a striped suit, leaning with deliberate insouciance against the brick wall. The two are familiars. Giacometti notices Caroline's exchange with the dandy grow agitated as the pianist responds to a query about the corollary between a painter's erasures and a musician's improvisations. "I have an easier job, Monsieur Giacometti. I have no need for erasures. With jazz, there are no wrong notes." He follows Giacometti's eyes across the room and observes that in order to play, he relies solely on his hands and his ears. "My eyes are unnecessary. I could be a blind man and have the same results on the piano. But you rely on both your hands and your eyes. Your eyes are everywhere, c'est vrai. Your eyes, Monsieur Giacometti, are as hungry as open mouths." "Exactement," he says as he watches the arrogant pimp wag a threatening finger at Caroline. Thank you. And I could not...
I would have to read this with an ice pack by my side.
I'm going to wait for Preston to return till I... I have just one more passage to read.
There's drinking to be done. Just take your time.
It's fun to be here hanging out.
It is.
Yeah, you just get that. It would be out of balance.
This is a very special group. These are the true believers.
Yeah, so really you had 500 pages to whittle down. Jeez.
Yeah,
Volume 2.
What does this amount to in manuscript pages?
um,
Is this half of that?
this is, yeah, half of that.
You started writing it when?
About
A decade ago?
About 2012. I remember having a conversation with Genine actually about it and saying I didn't feel like I was worthy of the subject.
Gotta grow into it.
And she said to me, and I've always remembered, all you do is the best you can, and you make your testament or whatever, you just do it honestly. And I tried to. And I think that when I was thinking about Giacometti at first, one of the things that attracted me to him is just his crazy work ethic. And at first I thought, yeah, he was after perfection, but I've come to realize he was much more really after authenticity. Just like every real artist is trying to, to realize when what they're doing is hits a false note, and where to back up from. And
Yeah, and if I may add something that I'm kind of not sorry, but I really talked Bart into not having a 600 pages novel, and because I read a lot, and I really like the 200 pages better, and so he did listen to me, but there are some scenes that he cut off, and I wish they were there like a footnote or something, but
Second.
that's for the
Second
next
volume.
edition.
yeah,
Well, you can make this 12 hours.
we'll save it for the scholars.
The director's cut.
Yeah, just do a 12-hour film, Bart. We like
Did
that.
you once consider doing a biography of Giacometti?
No, but I think I started out being pretty biographical in a way that, I was writing from his earliest times to his actual death, and it just became kind of, well, when you do a lot of research, you have to realize that there's no reason to show it off. You just use what works.
Yeah, one thing I'll say is that one of the research that I really appreciated that Bart wanted to do, and he wanted me to be there with him, is that Giacometti took the Queen Mary to go from England to New York to the show he was getting at the MoMA. And so we did that, and if it had not been for that novel, I would never have done that. And it was such a great experience.
Yeah, we did it exactly 50 years after he did it.
Yeah.
And
That's
it,
amazing.
it was his 64th year, and it was my 64th year.
Wow. That's so cool.
It was fun.
Yeah, so I thought, and he died the next year. I thought,
He didn't die.
am I going to follow up with that? How much can you channel somebody?
Not that much.
So, being at this hallowed place, Burden Beckett, I had to write, and I had several scenes with Samuel Beckett, but this is the one that remained.
He's right there.
Yeah, right behind me. On their way into La Coppola, he spots Sam Beckett coming out. Giacometti wraps around an arm around Caroline's waist and introduces her. Beckett gives her a brief smile and holds her hand too long. Moi, c'est Beckett. Giacometti persuades his friend to join them for a nightcap. Frederic, a taciturn waiter the size of a jockey, leads them to a table in the rear corner of the larger room. Caroline looks from one man to the other. You two must be big shots to get this table. Beckett tilts his head sideways. We are survivors, mademoiselle, of dubious merit. Giacometti grabs Beckett's shoulder affectionately. I haven't seen you for an age, Sam. I'm glad to run into you, Alberto. I've wanted to talk to you. Yes? A bit of business. Business? He echoes. Is that what we've become, Sam? A pair of businessmen? He remembers the time not many years ago that he and Beckett sat on a bench in the Tuileries, carrying on about each other's shoes, how destroyed they were. Giacometti's to this day are broken monstrosities. But Beckett, he sees, is wearing a new enough pair of brogues that hold a dull sheen. What's your line of work, monsieur? Caroline asks. The man looks to her like a middle-aged priest, perhaps one who has been defrocked. He speaks with an odd accent as well. Maybe that's a trapping from the church. Pardon me, Beckett asks. What's your business? Beckett stammers, I have no business. Oh, come on, monsieur. Everybody has a business, even me. Beckett considers his cognac and smiles at Alberto. Oui, and apparently your business is doing well. Sam is a writer, Giacometti says, and offers them each a cigarette. The flame from his Zippo illuminates Beckett's visage. His wide-rimmed glasses appear electrified. A half-inch wedge of silver hair stands tall as a Bruegel hayfield before the haying. A writer and an artist, Giacometti. A writer and an artist, Caroline says, exhaling smoke through her nostrils. The two, she thinks, make quite a pair. You guys look like you buy your clothes in the same shop, except that you keep yours quite a bit tidier, Monsieur Beckett, than Alberto manages. But Alberto works in his clothes. Does that mean that you work in your underwear, monsieur? Giacometti's laughter unfurls like a wave. Your friend is very charming, Alberto. You don't know the half of it. I'm sure I don't. So what's this business, Sam? A production of Godot's coming to the Odeon. The Odeon? That's very grand. Beckett sips his cognac and then makes a small button of his mouth. And I hear you're soon having a retrospective at the Tate. Yes, and now they want to show in New York. I'm sick of it all, Sam. All this folderol. The only thing it does is keep me from doing my work. Caroline sucks hard on her straw, and what's left of her Coca-Cola gurgles in the glass. Beckett sparks a quick laugh and faces Giacometti. Would you consider designing the set for Godot? Design the set? Godot has a set? A single tree. You want me to make a tree? I'm happy to try. Only when you have a moment. What kind of a tree, Sam? It won't have many leaves. Perhaps the suggestion of a few. Not too many branches either. No, I can't see many. A nearly bare tree. Close to bare. I'll get to work on it right away. I'm grateful, Alberto. Beckett turns toward Caroline. So, what do you think of Alberto's artwork? He hasn't let me see any of it yet. Just what he draws in the cafes. I've been trying to spare her the misery, Sam. Caroline raises her head high and looks from one man to the other. Do you suppose he thinks I'm a child, monsieur? Of course, I haven't been educated like you two, but I'm 30 years old and I have lived quite a bit. Beckett drops his chin into his hand. Oh, you just haven't seen Alberto's artwork. I'm afraid it's an acquired taste, says Giacometti. Caroline blows him a kiss, just like you are. Beckett bows his head toward her. You seem to have made the acquisition, mademoiselle. Thank you so much.
Did he design the tree?
He did, yeah. And there's a beautiful photograph by Cartier-Bresson of Beckett examining the tree in the studio with Giacometti standing by.
What year is this?
Well, Giacometti died in 1996, and I kind of collapsed the time that I think the Beckett play was in 61 in at the Odeon. I mean, it appeared earlier.
I saw Waiting for Godot on TV, they called it educational television then before PBS. And it was like a wall and a tree. I wonder if it's the same wall.
Oh, could be. Yeah, yeah.
In the early 60s.
I saw it
Stuck in my
And the tree, you see it in this photograph. It really has one leaf.
That's what he asked for.
Well, in the early London production, which I saw in about 1961 somewhere.
Oh, really? You saw?
Yeah, the tree had leaves in the first act, but in the second act it's lost almost all its leaves.
Oh.
Oh. So what was the play? It was a Beckett play?
Oh, the most famous Beckett play.
Yeah.
Oh,
Made,
yeah.
made him an
84.
international celebrity.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, wow.
Speak.
All right, I'm going to read the book. You convinced me.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming out, and thank you, Eric, for your graciousness.
Thank you for gracing the stage, seeing you too.
All right.
Yeah.
Honor to be here.
I should see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
In 9th and Broadway, is that where it is?
Yeah, that's what
Ninth,
we're meeting at 1 o'clock.
9th in Washington.
9th of Washington.
Yeah, we have a Chinatown meeting tomorrow.
Bart, before we wrap, may I ask you a question?
Yeah.
While you're up there in the light, you mentioned that Giacometti was a particularly rich character to explore and research and portray, in part because of how documented he was. I wonder, as an excavator trying to bring him to life on page, how much do you how important is it to you to depict him like all the way accurately as far as you can tell, and how and where do you allow yourself liberties?
Such a good question.
Yeah, it's really
Ah, my God.
it's so much better a question than somebody asked me at Readers Books in Sonoma, what percentage of this 60, 90 is true?
You're not at Reader's Books, you're at Bert and Beckett.
Okay, answer that question, Bart.
Well,
If you can.
you know, and I'd be interested in what Genine thinks about this kind of issue. I think you go for a truth that is true to the character you've made, and you know, I didn't make anything up wholesale. I tried to really capture who he was, but you know, he had a relationship that was 7 or 8 years with Caroline, and she was 20 when she met him. I have her be 30 and have it be a length of maybe 2 years. And just that kind of collapsing seemed to make more sense to make the story fluid and not stretch on, and I think you know, I made up all the dialogue. I knew a lot of things because of just infusing myself with so many first-person accounts and seeing him. It was unbelievably powerful. You can see them on YouTube, these interviews with him, and they're in French, but he is just so natural that that I kind of wanted to just create that naturalness, and you know, I saw this film made of him by, oh, I'm forgetting.
It's his name. Forget it.
Yeah, it's the ancient being that I am. That Jeffrey Rush played Giacometti in the film, and it lasted for about a week in the theaters, you know, and they kind of played Giacometti slapstick, you know, like he became like an absurd character who hid his money in jars, which he really did, but the way they played it was that he was kind of a buffoon. And Final Portrait, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Final Portrait.
Thank you.
What was the name?
Yeah, it was focused around the book that was written by his sort of official biographer, who had been a subject of his for. Yeah, it was kind of disappointing, I must say, and it was made by Stanley Tucci, who you know, I knew it was for him a kind of love project. It took him, like me, 10 years to get the film made, and yet somehow it turned into slapstick or
A lot of people put their money in jars. You know, there had been the worldwide depression. My parents, extremely rational people, worried about the stability of banks, even though they understood everything that was going on. So to make that seem comedic or something, it's yeah. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Might have been the influence of Beckett. You know, Beckett made a film with Buster Keaton.
Right.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's called Film.
Well,
Or were there other characters that you were kind of pulled away, had an impulse to write about in the course of that? I mean, in those 500 pages, were there some that you would have
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
intended to develop?
yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember some of the. I found that I had, you know, I had Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir in there a lot, because they were kind of good friends of his, and he had a falling out with Sartre in the end.
Who did?
But yeah, then I kind of felt like, what do you want this to be, a Hall of Fame here of
Name
all the
dropping.
luminaries?
Remember that name dropping.
So when I tell people about this book, I'm not going to present it as a biography. I'm going to say
It's not a
it's
biography.
a novel with Giacometti as the main character.
So Genine, can you talk about that kind of aspect of what's true and when you,
I think it has to do with like the book creates its own expectations. So like if we come to it like if it's called a biography, then we have different expectations than if we know it's a novel that's like rooted in his life, but like springing from it, or I mean, you're in good company. Like there are so many. Like I'm thinking of has anyone read Lauren Groff's novel Matrix? It's based on Marie de France, and but it just completely I mean, it's just really goes very far from any like documented thing. But it just kind of takes her as an occasion to imagine this whole like convent, and yeah, it just feels kind of like that you're inspired by him as an artist and like as a person who's dedicated to something, and like kind of that you're inhabiting that and imagining what I mean, in the same way that a memoir is largely like there's a lot of imagining going on, even if it's like writing about your own life, and there's conflation, there's like I remember like in this one when I took like a memoir class, and there was this one person who came to visit, and she was like, well, I have 3 sisters, but I have 1 in the book because it just it just like got the job done, and like and it's sort of like there's a really wonderful memoirist, Bernard Malamud, and I mean sorry, that's a fiction writer, Bernard Cooper, and I mean, this really sounds different than it sounded in 2000 because of all the like alternative facts and like things. But in 2000, reading this, I loved the way it was phrased. He was talking about like just exactly what I mean. He was talking about in relation to memoir, but you're even more clear about this is something I'm imagining and that's coming from a deep study of his life. But he had this line, you don't have to rely on the facts to get to the truth. And I think that speaks to, I mean, again, that sounds really different now, but in this climate, but there's a way that he's speaking about an emotional truth or like a...
No, I think that's all the difference. And
Yeah.
and I think, it must be an issue you come up with in writing poems too, that you didn't really see that tree lose its leaves, but you imagined it, or and you lived through something like that. And you know what I'm.
Yeah.
There's all these
Poetry has a different expectation though. Like, and if anything, there's like a way that people are coyly, talking about the speaker of the poem, and like, and like not necessarily assuming. I mean, a lot of people do assume that the I in the poem is the writer, and that they're telling you something that actually happened. But I think that just kind of what you're up against when you write a novel, and there are novels that are like historical novels that really do strive for accuracy, but even those, like, they have to like simplify, and like I just really think it has to do with the contract that you're making with the reader in the like just how do you set out in the novel, like
But also, novels and life are different. For example, novels have plots and life doesn't. They're two totally different kinds of entities. When you set out to write a novel, you're accepting a set of rules that have nothing to do with life. They're rules about this product that you're making. They're bound to be completely different.
That's
but even
right.
so, like
Yes,
people,
that's
yeah, like people so it's kind of like, even if it is a novel, you still have to like create.
It has to be lifelike. It has to be
Or-
convincingly lifelike.
Yeah, but I think, if I may say so, I think that, and I've heard it said to Bart and said to other authors, how much of it is true, and they say, what the fuck? I don't care. I mean, I just made up what I wanted and I just went on with the novel, and this is not the important part. I mean, it's not a something that is just close to the facts. It is fiction, and that's what makes it so interesting.
Well,
And,
you get to operate with this kind of latitude that this could have happened. Given these characters and when they interacted in this point in the history of the world,
That's lifelikeness.
yeah,
exactly,
this
yeah.
this
And that's like part of the fun of it. Like, that we would come to your book for an imagining of that, like a kind of furnishing of like the things we don't know that happened, or and we're in that imaginative landscape, and we're not like expecting it to be like a police report, and like even a police report has like,
Oh shit.
like there's amazing books about eyewitness testimony and all sorts of things that it's just sort of like the retelling of something is different from the imagining of something, and so like that's, I think it's kind of a study in the same way that he made studies, like you're kind of inhabiting his world and just like letting your own mind that exists now with what it knows imagine that world, and like that's why we would read it. Like we can read his own journals or whatever there is that exists of him, that if we just kind of want that close to the ground, it's more like, well, what is it to pass it through this person?
Yeah, and I really think that's why readers like me who are not, I don't think I'm very literary or whatever, but I love that kind of book where, that there's a little true and it's based on something, but you don't really question what it is, you just go with the story.
Yeah, you're reading it for
Love it.
You're reading it for different reasons.
Yeah.
I used to have this joke with Katrine. She loved to see at the beginning of a movie where it said based on a true story, and I said, fuck that shit. I mean, why does it have to be based on? I mean,
That's what this is.
yeah, this is, but but
Thank
You don't have to advertise it.
but I kind of disagreed with the whole idea that something only had value if it was based on a true story. That
But isn't it more
I
like
think
they're
of
just
it as a
saying that
value
to
thing. I thought-
acknowledge it? Yeah, like it's not
I thought it
it's
was
not like
just
it's
an-
selling it.
no, I always think they're selling it that way. Like it's going to be easier to digest because it's based on a true story.
You got a point. I never thought of it that way, but because I didn't care. Just like when I read your book, I will at the end I will not think I actually know anything about Giacometti.
Well, I would hope that after you read my book, you know a whole lot more about Giacometti than.
I went at your recommendation to the exhibit in New York, and I spent a lot of time looking to each sculpture there.
Oh.
And well, of course, I didn't know. Anyway, it's burned in my mind. I still don't know anything about you. Maybe I will after I read your book. But I think from what the readings I've heard today, I think I gotta get a few more hints about life.
Good.
Well,
That's a good thing.
And friendship. It seems like it's a book that's very much about friendship and like kind of artistic community, which is so precious and like so.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Like things that come up because you happen to be in the same. Oh, will you make the set design. You know, like it's like they didn't write an email to their agent, like, you know, like
Just knock on
they
the door.
Beckett
Yeah.
and Giacometti were in the same place, and it just organically arose that he would work on the set design. Like,
Did you read it?
I love that.
Ever read Bart?
Well, thank you guys so much for coming out. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you,
Alright.
Bart and Janine.
Yay.
And Eric.
Thank you so much.
These artists,
Okay, I'll turn the light.
we
So did you know there were people in
Yeah.
the room here?
In my
Turn the
life,
lights
like,
on so you can see
I had
them.
this plumber that I liked. I did construction work,
Love
and,
that.
and he did good work, and we talked about somehow it wouldn't make a novel.
I don't know, like it could.
His television, we're talking, you know, it's physics with a.
That sounds amazing. I want to read that novel. I love that.
Writing something like that. It's like so boring compared to
Yeah, but
Great.
this kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Neither of us
but
were
plumbing
drawing.
is not boring at all.
You know, all we did was build stuff. Neither of us were
It's
drawing.
not chopped liver.
Neither of us cheated on our wife. It's like,
That sounds incredible.
what's there to read about?
I'm gonna give a book
What makes copper better than
press.
whatever else?
You probably know this, and I wish I could remember something. I
Yeah.
can remember for you. There was a poet
Yeah.
who was from California. I think he might have been. Don't they have poet laureates? Or
Yeah.
So he might have been one in California. No. 80s?
In the 80s or he's in his 80s?
No. I'm thinking my memory's from the
I
80s.
know.
90s is the latest.
We had
And he
a
was like
couple
from the valley, and he wrote
things
about
with,
stuff I was
Chester
talking about.
and Bart and
Oh, you're
Chester.
you're thinking
Yeah,
of Phil
what they
Levine.
talked a lot about and
Yeah.
Yeah.
there was one
Incredible
that he
poet,
doesn't
yeah.
Yeah, which I could relate to. He talked about his father's hands or something.
Absolutely, yeah. He has a beautiful poem called "You Can Have It."
No, that's
about his
in,
brother
they have one in
coming
the
home
city.
from work at
Oh,
And
yeah.
then they have
and
another
like
one in
sitting down on the bed and just
Rockland.
like taking off his shoes and just being like sort of exhausted and it's just like you can have it and like it's a really
I'm
beautiful
so
poem.
glad you came by.
Yeah.
My kind of poet.
Yeah.
I gotta
There's
get.
probably a Phil Levine book here.
Oh, let's find
Good.
out. I'll buy it right now.
Eric, do you have any
It's
Phil
good.
Levine?
Yes,
Excuse
I
me.
love that.
Phil
I love
Levine?
that.
Where's it
yes,
written?
I was on my way to
Way
Bart.
back there, yeah, there's.
Bart is still there for you.
Bart.
I'm Bart.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. I found what I
So,
wanted.
yeah, let me try
I found
and-
what I needed.
Are you? But you probably want us to leave.
Are you
right?
on your bike?
Gee, it's amazing.
I've been
She
right
knows
here
her
for a
stuff.
while.
I
So that
mentioned this
Levine might be on that side, it might be on this side. The alphabet starts
I
somewhere.
was thinking about my description. She knew exactly who I was talking about.
Who is it?
Oh, right.
No, but that's.
Ah,
And this is just what my
Oh, I see.
previous question.
There it is.
So here we are at the level top, so Levine. And then.
Oh yeah, here's
Yeah.
Good. Do you
this
live in the
book. This is beautiful.
So,
What's
that's
that?
why I'm going to
Oh,
Bart.
It's called
Oh, okay, we all going to Bart.
There's also
Oh,
some.
where do you live?
Well, I live in Oakland, by the lake.
Okay, we're in Berkeley. So.
Oh, you're on
Oh, he
Berkeley.
was-
Oh, South Berkeley. Oh, lovely. South Berkeley's great.
So yeah, so there would be some other tiles here.
Hey, Bart, do you want to give a little note to him? If you're at the book?
Yeah, I was looking for a pen.
Do I have a pen? I must have a pen somewhere.
Just before we go to Bart, I should probably use the restroom.
Yeah, there's no restroom on Bart.
No, unfortunately.
You ever come here for class?
Oh, sorry.
You know, I never have. I need to get up on their calendar.
Yeah.
Oh, God, why don't I have a pen?
Okay, programming.
I mean,
Oh wow.
probably not across the board, but
Steve was
generally speaking, I
asking,
imagine jazz
where did he go?
musicians, jazz is like sort of and if you're in the Bay
Thank
Area,
you. That was
then you
beautiful.
Thank you so
have
much.
appreciation
What's
for
your name
these
again?
things,
Aaron,
Janine.
you know,
Genine, lovely,
Nice to meet you.
lovely meeting you. Lovely being acquainted with your work.
Thank you so much.
Your work's beautiful.
Would you like a copy of the photograph?
This place is.
Sure. I would love to give you one.
I would
do you
Learn
have,
more.
Let me just get
There,
it.
yeah.
I just where did Steve go?
Bathroom maybe?
Because he lost in the sacks.
couple
Look,
of weeks ago, before
four.
Dad went to Seattle,
Four
I
different.
dropped
Those
to
are
see
new,
that
and
set.
these are
I
used.
think I wanted to reach out to you guys. I was like, it's been
these
too
are-
long since I've
I'm
seen
not- I
Bart
think
and
this is
Katrina
the one
set
that has
something
that
up.
home club. You can have it.
Yeah, yeah, I think they would. I don't know, I don't know why.
Let me just
This
check.
week,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
National Book Award.
You guys are
Yeah.
right here.
It's so funny that you
we are, we are.
you teach.
know,
You said?
I
What do you
feel
teach?
that.
I just teach my
this
own
year,
workshops. I have
and
a, like a
I'm
generative.
just traveling so much. And
Yeah.
Sure,
slow
I'll use
down.
that.
I know,
Great.
I know.
Awesome.
You know,
I teach.
I
I
felt,
work one-on-one
you
with
know,
people,
needed
and I
to
also
really
just
be
have
there
an
more.
ongoing generative
But,
workshop.
What does
Okay.
generative mean?
Just writing like that. It's just
Bart is
generative as
not
opposed to
yet
like
sending me email, but,
studying a text. Well, we actually do read like a single poem
December
each week,
27th,
Of
and then we
their
do
own?
some writing. No,
having a little party.
people
Oh, I wish it was the
people
28th.
write during
Oh,
the
yeah.
I'll be
workshop,
flying home from
and then we
Seattle.
share some
sorry
work,
about that.
talk about it,
Okay.
and then we also read
Well, I
like
miss you.
a
We'll do a
poem
small
that I
party.
bring of
Okay.
somebody
Is that-
else's
is that
that is
purely
just sort of a
end
little
of-
craft
End of
discussion.
year, or is there
My
any other?
No,
great-
it's
I guess
because
it's grandniece,
Anton
great-niece,
is
I
there
don't know.
and Pablo is there with
She's-
the
she
kids.
writes
and-
poetry.
Yeah.
Do you have a card or any information?
We'll tell